Eric, thank you so much for joining me to have a conversation about your new film, The Elephant in the Room, which is so topical right now, even though it takes place during the pandemic, which of course we all are very familiar with. There's so much to talk about with the concept of this movie and kind of the conflicts that happen, and also just like you as a filmmaker as well, because this is your feature directorial debut.
Correct, yeah.
Wow, lots of things to discuss here. Um, I want to start with the inspiration for this story. I suppose it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that you've probably had something similar happen in your life when it comes to disagreements on politics. Tell me about framing that in the context of a new relationship during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah, so it's about a young woman who's a kinda lonely progressive during that period after the Biden win when there was questions about was it stolen from the Trump side, who's freaking out over that, meets a guy she might wanna date, turns out he's a Trump voter. So, can they make it work? But it's a romantic comedy, it's this lighthearted exploration of polarization, really. So that's done with heart and comedy, as opposed to like the seriousness of the topic, although it is a serious topic and they do have conversations about serious issues at times. So yeah, I mean, I started writing it in January of 2021, which was kind of an eventful month, which is when it's set. Basically, it goes through that January 6th period. And but I really started thinking about it a few years earlier, I think during the first Trump administration when uh I think it's a more polarized era than ever with Trump, on the scene. Although it was already polarized before that, it's gotten, I think, worse. And when he was first elected, I really started thinking about polarization as like this key underlying issue that isn't being talked about that much because it's not as urgent or in your face. And it's not that I made the movie about that issue as like the main reason to make it. It was more like, I'm a screenwriter. I've been writing for decades, and I've written multiple like romantic comedy type scripts. And you always need something in the way of a relationship. So it was partly just idea generation of, oh, politics could be the thing in the way of a relationship in 2020. That's how bad it is. Maybe it wouldn't have been as much 20 years before. It might have been an issue then, but it's a bigger issue now. So I started thinking about, well, what if somebody, who was really hair on fire about Trump, which I was myself, met somebody with the opposite views. And I did have a friend during the first Trump administration who surprised me that he was a Trump voter and explained why. And he was a very thoughtful person, a very nice person. And it's helped me start to see, oh, there's various kinds of people and various kinds of reasons. And the media that I consume isn't really talking about that. Why doesn't it? And their media doesn't do it for our side either, So anyway, all that sort of like went into the stew of this.
Mhm. You had mentioned, how you wanted a lighthearted take on this, even though it's a very serious, subject that, has ruined a lot of relationships. People have really drawn lines and boundaries and made that a non-starter or a deal breaker, for all kinds of relationships, not just, like romantic relationships, but friendships, family. Like it's so divisive, and I think we all kind of recognize that. So with such a heavy subject that we're all pretty well like understanding how difficult of a topic it is, how did you find that balance between keeping it lighthearted, keeping it approachable, but also, having to have these conversations and deal with the conflict that comes with having these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with just I consider myself more of a comedy person in general, and I was trying to write a comedy or romantic comedy with some seriousness, but keeping it light and keeping the characters like lovable and endearing was always the goal. Which I would be doing anyway if it was not about politics, but it was still in that kind of genre. So part of it was just an intention of that's what this movie is. Politics just happens to be the thing in the way of the relationship. Um, and so always looking for how to make the characters funny and their interactions funny and yet sort of, have a lot of heart at the same time. But then also, the thing is you want the audience to like both people and kind of want them to be together while believing both people seem real enough in terms of their politics. So those are difficult things to do in this topic because if you're trying to appeal potentially to audiences of any persuasion, they're going to come with pre-existing likes, dislikes, opinions about what those people are like or what our side is like or whatever. So, that was a challenge that many drafts of the script I was always working on, which is to make both sides be believable and likable, ideally, so that you could watch it from any point of view and say, okay, I recognize myself in them. I recognize other people I've known in them. I don't hate this person. Maybe they're a little annoying, or I think they're misguided politically, but they're still a good person. So it was like a real goal, because just from a screenwriting perspective, you want the audience in this genre to connect with both people. You kind of need them to, and believe that they should have an attraction that maybe is worth exploring. So if anybody is too serious or too unlikable or too, I'm not saying I achieved it, but that was the goal, it would get in the way of that.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about the characters. You have a couple at the center of this rom-com, of course, Leia and Vincent. Talk to me about casting them and that dynamic that they generated with each other, where they have to have chemistry, but also are at odds.
Yeah, I do think they have a lot of chemistry. I also think the third lead character, Dominic Burgess's character,
Mhm.
has a lot of chemistry too
I was
with
going to
them.
talk
And
about him too, because you, as a
okay,
comedy writer, he's definitely like comic relief here, and I
yeah,
absolutely want to address that.
yeah. Uh, I didn't have the luxury of, like, because it was a very low budget independent film that I raised the money independently. So I didn't have the budget to do like a casting director and a big audition process, and it wasn't the level of movie that you could just that anybody and everybody was gonna, like, you're gonna get stars. Like, these aren't stars, but these are working actors who have been in things you've seen that you may not realize. Like, all of them have been in a lot of things, movies, TV, commercials, whatever, um, stand-up specials, etc., viral improv comedy sketch stuff. So, honestly, I just got lucky in the casting that I had an agent at the Gersh agency who was really like, I'm going to cast this movie from our clients. I'm going to keep sending you people that you may never have seen or heard of or knew about. And you'll look at their reels. And then, I would just make an offer if I like somebody. It wasn't like they were coming into audition for the role. It was more like, do you want to do this movie? And if you do, you can do it. And so Alyssa and Sean, who plays Vincent, both came from that same agency, and they didn't know each other though. But the one agent had put both of them on the list, and I just responded to their reels. She's a comedian who has had viral videos, uh, um, and and he has done a lot of different things, but both of them have I think, a warmth. And I don't know, they're different. They're very different from each other, but they seem like they would work. And I just hope that they would have chemistry. I wouldn't know that in advance, and it was like too late if they didn't once we started shooting.
Oh, what a gamble. I mean, they definitely do. You got lucky, and they're very talented, and they do what they're supposed to here in this movie, so that worked out. Talk about Dominic and bringing Dominic on board as this kind of third character that gives the movie a lot of comic relief.
Yeah. So Dominic Burgess is a British actor who's been on so many TV shows. It's so versatile. You've definitely seen him on something. Most recently was on Palm Royale. He played the guy that dressed all the ladies, the flamboyant, like, costumer for the women of Palm Beach, whatever. But he's been in everything. So I knew a little bit, and I wrote it with him in mind. He's also a filmmaker and just a very talented, very funny guy. Um, and so luckily he was available and willing to do it, because he's very busy. They all are.
Mhm.
And he's just and I just his character is like a housemate of the female lead, who doesn't really know her or doesn't really care about getting to know her, but he's very introverted, and she's trying to make friends with him because it's the pandemic, and she's alone in this house, bubbling in this house with him, and also kind of wants him to be the gay best friend
Mhm.
in her romantic situation. And so I kind of decided, well, I can't do that trope again of the stereotypical gay best friend. So I decided to try and do like the opposite. He's still gay. He doesn't want to be the best friend. He has none of the attributes you would associate with that character, the sassy, smart, fashion oriented, whatever person. And so I just wrote him as this, like, kind of bizarrely endearing, but no social IQ or emotional IQ, or at least it seems that way at first. And I thought that they just made a nice pairing because she's so eager and he's so not, but over time there's a relationship of value that develops between them as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting how much these characters are so much about, being opposite of each other. And so you have Vincent and Leia who are opposite politically, you have Martin and Leia who's opposite socially, and I think that that really helps, emphasize the character development that happens across all of them, by the end of this movie. Um so so I wanna talk a little bit about production.
Yeah.
You were talking about this is a low budget project, and so, we all would love to have infinite budgets to make everything we want happen, but you made this happen with the low budget that you did. I'm kinda curious what you prioritize when working with a low budget in making a feature film. What were your priorities here? The things that, like, you didn't want to, compromise, but of course you have limited resources.
Yeah. I think the number one thing is SAG actors,
Mhm,
union working actors, which means a whole process with SAG after the union of getting a contract with them where you're going to pay the actors a certain minimum and guarantee residuals and do various to treat them in certain ways and have all these like hoops you kind of have to jump through to just get that going. So I wouldn't have tried to do it with non-professional, non-union or non-union actors because I just felt like the strongest acting pool in Los Angeles where I was living and where I made it, are all not only union members but working actors, because I'm a fairly inexperienced director. I also wanted people who I just knew were really solid and really funny, and could just do it and it wouldn't be like I have to somehow, fix it or make it happen because they're not like just gonna bring something, and they all could do that. So that was the number one thing. Um, I mean, there were a lot of things I did to cut to keep the budget low. Um, many, many, many things. I'm trying to think other things that I had to do, that I had to spend money on that I would not compromise. That's a good question. I don't know that there are major things beyond that. I mean,
mhm,
I wanted talented professionals in all the key roles, of course, so and I had that, whether it's the director of photography or the editor or the music composer, like some of those most important creative roles. But there also were people that I knew or had some connection to or who reached out to me and wanted, and I got to know who I trusted, either I'd worked with before or I trusted that they were really good. They were going to be really good. There's just a question of can I get them for the money I can afford? And in some cases, negotiating and paying a little more in order to have that security in the key kind of department head creative crew roles.
mhm. Yeah, I did notice, there was a number of, professionals who you worked with on your short film who came over to work, on this film as well, and so it seems like that networking capability really helps you, you know, uh, keep talented people kind of in your vicinity.
Well, yeah, and that was real. That's cool that you like researched that. I mean, probably talking about Cole Pisano, the director of photography, and Alex Taylor, the composer. Both of them, we went to the same college in Ohio for film school. Although they were way younger than me, I didn't know them at the time. But when I made a short film a few years ago that you mentioned, I got this. I kind of leaned on my former professors and the sort of the network of graduates from that program. Who do you know who's working and good in these roles? And that's how I found Cole and Alex. So they did the short, and then I just wanted them back, for
Mhm,
the for this first feature. And luckily, I was able to get them both. Alex almost only composes for horror films. He's a
mhm,
really talented horror film composer who's done a bazillion of them, and rarely goes outside that genre, and is so in demand in that genre he doesn't need to. But he obviously is can do more because he did this, and it's a very, heartfelt rom-com type score.
mhm. One more question about production. I guess I wanna hear a little bit more about your perspective on keeping the production kind of, small and confined. You have just a core cast of, just a couple characters. You don't have too many settings. It seems like you have everything kind of, really, in a very manageable place for this. I guess I wanna know more about the logistics of trying to work out a feature film with these limited resources and the benefits of keeping the production, as I guess, as manageable as possible here. How did you
Yeah.
approach that?
Yeah. Love to. I mean, so it starts with keeping the script fairly short, like 90 pages, and being able to shoot it in 18 days, which some people would say is a luxury. Some people would say that's nothing, depending on what your background is. But 18 days of shooting, we shot the entire thing at one house.
Mhm.
So it was a location. Even the parts that seem like they're a different house were shot at that same house, believe it or not. And
Mm, wow.
so we had a friend who was willing to let us take over their house for 3 weeks. And that was crucial, and for a very small amount of money. I mean, we had
Mhm.
permits and everything to shoot there. We spent the money on permits. That's one of those things like, well, if you don't and some neighbor calls the police, you could be
Mhm.
shut down. But if you have a permit from the city to shoot, so we had that. But anyway, the and insurance, you have to pay for insurance. But
Mhm.
the shooting all in one place, like you said, it's very small cast. Most scenes only have two people in them. Not fancy in terms of how you're shooting. I mean, it looks good because we have professional people behind the camera and the lighting, and we have a beautiful house
Mhm.
that we could mostly just go in there and shoot the house the way it was, because we just decided in the script this is like her aunt's sort of fancy house that she's house sitting in. So it can look however we want it to look. It doesn't have to reflect her personality. It reflects this unseen aunt's personality, right? So we did very little production design.
Mhm.
Very little. We basically just shot with the house the way it was, changed some pictures on the wall, did some minor set dressing in certain rooms to make it work better. And so that was key, and also just keeping the crew as small as possible. I mean, we had our director of photography, and this is part of working with Cole before and having a rhythm and a system and a happy experience, that it was like, okay, I can do this with only two other people on my crew, like one assistant camera and one lighting person.
Mhm.
And Cole was moving lights himself, and so was the assistant camera. So very small crew there, and we didn't have a transportation department, we didn't have a casting department. I didn't have a first AD, let alone a second AD. I just did all that myself, and
Mhm.
I learned that I could do that myself. But my line producer did sort of require me to hire a few extra things that I didn't think I needed, and she was totally right. Between the short that I'd done and doing a feature, you really needed certain other logistical sort of production office type staff, including her,
Mhm.
that was necessary for the just day-to-day payroll and logistics of the set, running the set. But yeah, keeping the crew super small. And of course, it's a movie with no special effects
Mhm.
of any kind. It's talking, it's two people sitting or walking around a house talking. So it's mostly, you can shoot a lot quickly if you
Mhm.
have the performances and you're prepared, which luckily we had those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I mentioned that question because I think when a independent story overextends itself, it's apparent. And I love supporting independent filmmakers, but when you do work within your means really, really well, and you keep that small production in mind, I think it comes together. And the production budget just was not a thought to me because it made sense for the story. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
all of that worked really well here.
Thank you.
Um, let's talk about, I guess, politics.
Yeah.
Not specifically, we're not gonna talk about our politics, but I wanna dive a little bit more into how people should internalize this movie. When you make a movie like this that's about politics, and divisiveness is kind of a core theme, or core thing happening here, what do you want people to take away from a story like this? I'm trying to think about how to talk about the end without talking about the end. I don't wanna spoil
Yeah.
anything, but
I don't
I
think we have
think
to mention the end
yeah,
to have the conversation.
exactly. Right, cool. So, like, I think that there's, interesting narrative choices you make, in how the film resolves, and I guess I just kinda wanna know what you want people to take away,
Yeah.
by the end of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, just an entertainment experience that you enjoy, where you bond with the characters emotionally, you're laughing, you feel something, you're engaged throughout. That's the main thing. The political side, just keeping that separate for a second, because it's not like a message movie, it's not like a documentary with a call to action. It's not trying to get you to have a certain view or change a certain view politically at all. However, what it's subtly asking the audience to explore is polarization in their own lives and the extent to which they maybe, stereotype and sort of fear and loathe and dismiss and cut off people that might have voted differently, um, and equate them with the leaders they voted for, instead of seeing them as people that voted for somebody that they maybe didn't love everything about. to put it mildly, but have reasons why they think the issues and policies fit what they think is a better way. Um, so, as I was raising the money, part of it I got through investors through the WeFunder platform, crowdfunding for investors. But part of it is I found some nonprofits who care about polarization as an issue, and I
Mm,
queried some of them, and some of them put some money into the movie and helped me with the script and how to depict, especially the Trump supporting character, which I was less familiar with. Different reasons why people might be a Trump supporter, different personalities, different worldviews. That if you only watch like The Daily Show, you wouldn't know about that, right? That helped a lot, but also they got me starting to really become more of a believer in polarization as the underlying issue. That's almost the bigger issue that's in the way in our politics, and it's producing some of the politicians we have and some of the gridlock that we have and the media that we have, which is very incentivized, as are the politicians, to be polarized. Right now, the system
mhm.
incentivizes polarization and doesn't incentivize the opposite of that at all, which I think hurts everyone. Um, so I guess my hope would be you watch it and you're like, yeah, in a soft way, in a light way, in a gentle way, it's maybe nudging you to think about, talk about, uh, you know, slightly soften in your view of, you know what, I might hate the person they voted for. I might hate the media that's promoting that person. That doesn't mean I have to hate them. And it doesn't mean I can't come to them with an openness and a benefit of the doubt, as opposed to I have to shout them down and convince them and talk past each other and just be, what they support is unthinkable, so they're unthinkable, and there's no, other way to view it. Um, so certainly that's my preference, although the movie doesn't like take you by the, grab you by the throat and force you to think that way. But I think that's sort of the takeaway, I guess I would hope, um, people would have.
Yeah, and I think maybe you kinda hit on it, but maybe just to clarify, what do you think is the wrong takeaway from this movie? Like, what don't you want people to take away from this, when they're done watching it?
Well, most of it would be, would just be, I hope they think that I succeeded. In other words, I hope
Mhm,
they liked the movie. I hope they found it funny and engaging. I hope they found the characters likable and believable. Because
mhm,
some people might be like, well, that's not a real Trump voter because he's
mm,
way too nice and way too soft or whatever, if you're a anti-Trump person. Or some people on the other side might be like, she's so annoying, like all those liberals, if you're on the other side. And so I don't like her and I don't want to watch the movie. Like those are the things that I tried to like massage as
mhm,
I was writing and directing and editing it, so that hopefully there wouldn't be those many, opinions. I hopefully people won't be like, because some people when they hear the concept are like, well, this is tone deaf, this
mm.
is not okay in 2026 Trump 2.0, and I understand. uh Hopefully though, when they see the movie they go like, well, actually the movie was sweet and the movie was positive and the movie was loving and measured and believable, and I got caught up in the story. That's what I would hope. So I would hope that they don't have the opposite reaction of that, which is, this is terrible and shouldn't exist.
That's fair. Which I don't think at all. That's definitely not the takeaway to have, and I think most people will understand that. I wanna end on the future of your career. Is romance and romance comedy the place that you're gonna keep your writing and filmmaking for a while, or do you have other aspirations?
I don't know. I have all different kinds of aspirations. I'm writing something in novel form for the first time ever right now, which is more of a sci-fi thing, although it has a romantic relationship at its heart. But it's not so much a comedy, because it's set in the future and it's about a system in the future that affects the characters and that they're trying to live within. So it's hard to say really. I keep kind of trying different things. I've had a long career as a screenwriter, doing things very different from this, but also wanted to go do the kind of things I wanted to do, like this, which sometimes means you have to like start over independently and just raise the money like I did
Mm.
to make something, as opposed to just writing scripts all the time. That being said, it's a lot of work over a lot of time to raise the money and make an indie movie and then try to promote it. So I'm not sure I'm eager to do that exact thing again on that exact scale. But I might, I have some other scripts and some other ideas. So thank you for asking, but it's all kind of in flux. And I'm just like, I have a few scripts that are in process and I have a book that I'm writing now, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do next.
I love it. You've done work in TV as well, right? So
Yeah, I got my start working with Tom Hanks. He basically promoted me from assistant, and I worked on Band of Brothers and From the Earth to the Moon as a writer producer on those two HBO miniseries. So I was working very high level projects right out of the gate.
wow.
And then I've also done a lot of other stuff, worked on staff on series, and had agents that were pitching me around Hollywood, and I was selling ideas for series and writing pilots for networks and doing all that kind of stuff, as well as writing features that mostly never got produced, but I sometimes got paid to write them, which is
Mhm.
like the normal screenwriter's life, right? You write a lot of stuff that you don't always get paid, or it doesn't sell, or it doesn't get made, but you're sort of piecing together a living through that. And so I've did that for many years, but was mostly known for TV stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have short filmmaking, feature filmmaking, TV, you have a novel. I love how you just kind of have your fingers in all types of storytelling, and that's really exciting to hear about.
Thank you.
So, well, any final thoughts that you want people to know, or any last words on the elephant in the room?
I mean, I'll just let people know that it's available to stream. You can see it on Tubi or Amazon. You can rent it on Apple and Google and all those usual places. It's not on Netflix or a specific service. In other words, it's sort of in all these different places where you can either rent or in some cases stream with ads. So it's out there. There's a website, and we've also been having screenings on college campuses
Yeah.
and other places because it's a I think a good discussion piece, and like political science professors and others feel like it's a good thing to do an event around and have students discuss it after. So there's a website for the film, and in-person screenings are listed there as well as they come up. So seeing it in a group in the traditional movie setting is always nice for me, and I also think for audience members.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about film is to be able to watch a movie and then sit down and have a conversation about it afterward. And this just like absolutely lends itself to that, especially when you're around company who can hold these conversations in a very mature manner,
Yeah,
and be open-minded or open to other people's perspectives. I think there's a lot that you can mine out of those kind of conversations. So
yeah,
well done. Yeah, well done. I'll make sure to put links to where you can stream it in this description once it publishes. But Eric, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity to screen the movie and chat with you about it.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everybody.